They said she was beautiful once. Before the dust, before the whispers, before she stood at the altar in that threadbare chapel, marrying the man half the town thought was beneath her. Her name was Flynn, a schoolteacher, well-spoken, dignified, quiet but not timid. She wore sorrow like a second skin, ever since her parents passed and left her drifting like tumbleweed. Dry Creek became her refuge, but her presence stirred gossip like wind through sagebrush. And when she married Ephraim Cain, the gossip turned cruel. He was a giant of a man, slow-moving, slow-talking, built like a railway engine, and just as silent. He'd worked the mines till a cave-in took half his hearing and left a crooked scar down the side of his face. Didn't dance, didn't smile, just nodded when folks spoke and went back to whatever odd job he had that week. They called him dumb, called her desperate, said she only married him because no one else would take her in. That she pitied him. But pity never looked like that. You had to see the way he looked at her, the way his shoulders dropped when she placed a hand on his chest, the way he brushed dust from her skirt like she were made of glass. The town mocked in murmurs, whispered behind hymn books, laughed in corners of the saloon. Mara never flinched. She walked beside him every Sunday, cooked with him, read to him under candlelight, and when he fixed the leaking schoolhouse roof single-handedly during a storm, she kissed him right there, in front of the children. Still, they jeered, until the night the riders came. It was just after harvest, the air thick with heat and smoke. 4 men, drunk and bitter, rode into Dry Creek looking to make someone bleed. They hit the saloon first, shattered bottles, beat the piano man, took whatever coin they could grab. Someone ran for the sheriff, but he was up north tracking a cattle rustler. By the time the riders reached the church steps, everyone was hiding. Everyone but Ephraim Cain. They came at dawn. The clatter of hooves, the shouts, the thunder of fists on doors. A gang of outlaws, hardened and hungry-looking, swept into Fairwood with rifles raised and cold purpose in their eyes. They weren't here for trade or talk. They were here for revenge. A local deputy had gunned down their leader's brother in a skirmish weeks back. And now, they'd come to settle the score with the whole town. Mara was at the bakery when it started. Her hands still dusted with flour, she ran into the street as people screamed and scattered. Children were pulled indoors. Storefronts shuttered in haste. But the gang moved faster. Guns barked warnings. One man dragged the schoolteacher from the steps of the church and demanded to know where the sheriff was. Mara's heart kicked against her ribs. And then she saw Ephraim. He stepped into the chaos like he was walking into a summer breeze. Calm, measured. He didn't reach for his gun, didn't raise his voice. Just strolled into the center of town, boots crunching gravel, eyes steady beneath the brim of his hat. "Leave them be," he said, his voice carrying across the square like thunder. The gang turned. A tall, broad-shouldered man with a jagged scar along his neck, clearly their leader now, narrowed his eyes. "Who the hell are you?" "Ephraim Cain," he said. "I fought under Colonel Strickland. I know every one of your rifles is loaded, and I know none of you is stupid enough to die today." One of the outlaws laughed, but it was nervous. Another one fingered his trigger. The leader sneered. "You think you can talk us down, soldier boy?" Ephraim didn't flinch. "I'm not here to talk. I'm here to tell you, the people in this town have nothing to do with your quarrel. You want justice? Take it up with the law. You want blood? You'll have to go through me?" Mara's breath caught. He was unarmed, or at least he seemed to be. The odds were ridiculous, but something in his voice, in his presence, stilled even the wind. For a moment, no one moved. Then one of the younger outlaws flinched. Maybe he was spooked. Maybe he was just too young for war. His rifle swung up. "Ephraim!" Mara screamed. Too late, the shot cracked the stillness. Ephraim jerked, and yet he moved forward. Another shot rang out. Then another. The leader shouted for them to stand down, but it was chaos now. Ephraim moved like a man possessed. He tackled the nearest gunman, wrestled the rifle away, and used it like a staff to knock two others down. But he was bleeding. Mara could see it spreading across his shirt, bright and terrifying. By the time the sheriff and two deputies arrived, rifles blazing, shouting orders, the gang was in full retreat. Bodies lay in the dust. One outlaw was dead. Two were wounded. The rest scattered. And Ephraim? He was on his knees. Mara ran to him, pushing past the stunned onlookers, past the townsfolk who just yesterday had sneered at her like she was a joke. She dropped beside him, catching his weight before he collapsed. His shirt was soaked. His breath came in short, ragged bursts. "You idiot," she sobbed. Why would you do this?" His eyes, still clear, still soft, met hers. "Because they needed someone," he whispered, "and I had something to prove." "No," she whispered fiercely, brushing hair from his brow. "You don't owe them anything. You didn't have to be their hero." He smiled faintly. "Didn't do it for them. Did it for you." Tears rolled freely down her cheeks. She pressed her lips to his temple, holding him close as he slipped into unconsciousness. Behind her, the people of Fairwood emerged, slowly, cautiously, from their hiding places. Eyes wide, faces pale, and for the first time since the day Mara Flynn arrived, they looked at her not with scorn, but with awe. The silence in Dry Creek felt heavier than the storm clouds rolling over the mountains that morning. They buried Ephraim under a broad oak near the ridge, the one he used to rest under when bringing in firewood. Mara stood still as stone, her black dress soaked through from the rain that had begun halfway through the service. She didn't flinch. She didn't wipe the tears. She just stared at the wooden cross bearing his name. Behind her, the townsfolk had gathered. People who had once whispered, laughed, and turned away when she passed. Now they kept their hats in hand, their eyes on the muddy ground, ashamed of their silence, ashamed of their cruelty. No one knew what to say. Not Sheriff Calder, who dismissed Ephraim as a fool when he warned them about the gang's movements. Not Lucille from the bakery, who'd once muttered loud enough for Mara to hear, "She could have done better than that broken soldier." Not Mr. Prentice, who had raised prices on Mara and Ephraim out of spite when they couldn't afford the town's gossip tax. But Ephraim Cain had died with his back to the town, facing down danger alone, his rifle the only thing between Dry Creek and the chaos that could have spilled through its streets. He hadn't died to prove them wrong. He died because that's who he was, a protector, and a man who didn't ask to be understood, only to be given a chance to live in peace. And now, peace was all that remained. Mara waited until the last person drifted away. Even then, she didn't leave. She knelt, ran her fingers through the wet grass, and whispered something only the wind could carry. When she stood, her back straightened like a woman reborn. She walked back into town slowly, head held high. And as she passed the general store, she noticed something different. People didn't turn away anymore. They nodded. Some even tipped their hats, but she didn't nod back. Not yet. It wasn't bitterness. It wasn't anger. It was that they hadn't earned her forgiveness just by showing up at a funeral. But the first step had been taken. A quiet acknowledgement of the truth. They were wrong. And now they had to live with the knowledge that the man they'd scorned had saved their lives. Over the weeks that followed, Mara rebuilt. The sheriff offered her Ephraim's old deputy rifle. It had been recovered, dented, but intact. She didn't take it. She didn't need a weapon to make her presence known anymore. Instead, she started teaching the town's children to read, using the schoolhouse Ephraim once dreamed of restoring. The mayor offered funds. The blacksmith helped fix the door. The women who once gossiped brought food for the children. No one said it out loud, but everyone knew. They were trying to atone. One day, a young boy, Tommy Kells, the banker's son, asked her why she didn't cry when she told Ephraim's story. Mara smiled softly. "Oh, I cry," she said, "but not because he's gone. I cry because I had the honor of loving a man like that. And some people never get that." She placed her hand over her heart and looked out the window, where the sun broke through the clouds, golden and forgiving. "I was mocked for marrying him," she said, "but I was never prouder of anything in my life."